So speaking of the progressive wing here in the United States, this week I interviewed Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I asked her about her position on Ukraine, and particularly about the absence of a real kind of progressive position in Congress on the question of peace in between Ukraine and Russia. We can play a little bit of that clip here.
Democrats also hammered progressives for that CPC letter encouraging, the pursuit of negotiations to end the war in Ukraine, saying that doing it right before the election would end up hurting Democrats. That letter, as you know, that was retracted. You never commented on that, on whether you still stood by it, and you and other progressives have been kind of criticized for not laying out your thinking on kind of what the progressive position ought to be when it comes to this war. I don't know if you saw this, but Russia just announced it's withdrawing from Kherson, which is a massive defeat for them. But so why hasn't there been more of a progressive voice on the debate over war funding? And what's your thinking on what the U.S. approach should be now?
Yeah. Well, I think to be clear, both the decision to publish that letter at that time and withdraw that letter at that time were decisions that we were not made privy to. But in terms of the content of the letter, timing aside, in terms of the content of the letter, I believe that a lot of it is quite consistent with what we've also been hearing from former Obama administration officials, the Biden administration, and now even recently there have also been, I believe, some developments coming out of Ukraine indicating an openness to negotiate under certain preconditions. I believe that progressives have always advocated to leaning on diplomatic solutions. We should continue to lean on that. I think that the large asterisk is how can we bring Russia to the table without compromising Ukrainian sovereignty and just core principles of self-determination. But that is really what the landscape of diplomacy is about. And even when Obama was on Pod Save America several weeks ago, he discussed about how at this present time, diplomatic relations are likely worse than they may have been almost at any point during the Cold War, which is a very dangerous place to be. And so, the reaction to the publication of this letter, I think continues to be a bit overblown. And I think that there's it's almost like people are looking for a problem where there really, I don't think is any intent for there to be one. And I also think that it's quite consistent with what we've been hearing from, frankly, the Biden administration, former Obama administration officials, and even certain Ukrainian officials. And now when it comes to, that recent development on Russia, I do believe that there's some skepticism that we're hearing from Ukrainian officials about whether that is in, the genuineness or authenticity or good faith that announcement was made. But, I think that's something that we will soon see play out.
A couple highlights of that include your furious typing and your kids in the background. So what did you make of her comments? Again, I from the perspective of somebody kind of outside the left, it's really interesting to hear her say, listen, we were not privy to what was happening with that retraction.
Yeah, right. So everyone has thrown the initial letter under the bus. It's interesting to see her throw the retraction of the letter under the bus.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure she got a call, actually.
Really?
I would think about that. People can read the full Q&A over at The Intercept. It's broken up into two parts. The question, the outstanding question, which I didn't follow up on, I should have, but I moved back to the abortion rights questions, is, well, what is the role of Congress? Okay, so Congress tried to do this letter. It may actually have had some impact, by creating a 4-day conversation about negotiations.
Well, how long was it after that we found out that the Biden administration?
We found that out, and then and then all of a sudden you started seeing other people coming forward saying, yeah, actually, there's nothing wrong with this.
Overton window.
So even in retreat, they may have taken one for the team there. But what else can they do? Now, do they have enough votes to be relevant players on this? I suspect that the lame duck will see a big war spending package because they won't want to leave it in the hands of an uncertain Congress going forward.
Well, and especially if, as we were talking about, there's a sense that there's some blood in the water, that if you sort of double down right now,
Right, because then you're sending a signal. That could be, you could, like, that would, you would, from the defenders of a package like that, they would say this is actually diplomatic because we're going to approve another X billion dollars, and that's going to be such a morale blow to,
this is it.
to the Russians that they're going to say, okay, you know what, fine. Like, what can we keep?
Yeah. The only way out is through.
Right, and then you sit down and draw an end to the war.
Right.
Like that's like as people keep saying in Europe, leaders over there, wars end. Like wars have to end. They usually end with negotiations. So let's get them going faster. And so if it's clear in the lame duck that the U.S. is like in this with another $80 billion or whatever insane amount they're going to put on the table. But then the question is, what role do the progressives have there? And because so many, and I'm curious for your take on this, so many Republicans are for this spending. You've got plenty that are against it, but you've got plenty that are still for it. That means a block of 4, 5, 6 Democrats who would be able to stop a partisan bill, because Democrats only have 222 right now in the lame duck or whatever it is. So if you can get 5 Democrats, boom, Pelosi doesn't have a majority anymore.
Right.
But 5 Democrats voting no on war funding, you just got to go find 5 Republicans.
No, I think the interview actually, and the points in the interview, and I actually think now that we were talking about sort of that shift from the retraction, the entire kerfuffle, what that underscores is the need for progressives and serious peace-minded conservatives to be like extremely dogged right now, because that's how you push people to the negotiating table, and that's how you continue to shift the Overton window towards negotiations. Because if you're not shifting the window to negotiations, and if you're not seriously doing that, if these conversations aren't happening and it isn't clear to party leadership that progressives, conservatives are willing to negotiate to get, or are willing to stand firm to get to negotiations, are willing to withhold votes to get to a point of negotiation, or to ensure that that's a priority for leadership and is not something silly that's like dismissed as, you know, the crank's perspective. That's why I think it's really important. Actually, this underscores how important it is for progressives, conservatives who are on the negotiation side that are less hawkish to be very, like, not to say, okay, we got them talking, and they're doing what we asked for, so now we can sort of go along and get along. Absolutely not. If anything, it's the opposite.
Right, and in all wars, all the time, the camp that's arguing against war is in the weakest position when their side is rolling to victory. But there have been so many opportunities that people have lost to reach a peace agreement because they were rolling to victory, and they thought that it's right around the corner. And then 4 years later, you're still fighting. You're
still fighting, still spending crazy amounts of money, still losing just an unbelievable amount of people. That's the last thing that we would want to happen. It doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.